In this series between G2 and Mad Lions Koi, Mad Lions actually deployed a very interesting way of drafting around a Varus pick on B2, B3 and actually giving it the appropriate resources to kind of put G2 in a bit of a pickle. And I really like the way they actually adapted to this. I think G2 has been a team that's gone unpunished for very long with the way they've been drafted, and I really like the creativity from Mad Lions here, and I wanted to kind of point that out. So this starts off with a Azir opener, and putting with the bans, there's nothing too crazy here, I would say, and the Azir basically says nothing. A lot of teams are trading things like the Jinx here, and which is fine. What I want to point your attention to here is the Ivern on 2 very early on. It's not too surprising because this is something that Elyoya is, I would say, pretty commonly known for at this point. Like, he doesn't really hold back in that sense, right? He's someone that can play this. And then they pick the Varus in response. And at first glance, it does look pretty normal, right? It's nothing too crazy. It doesn't really show much. And that's kind of the idea here. G2 also kind of respond. They pick Nautilus on 3. I would say both comps kind of don't really say much, with the only exception being the Ivern being like a little bit of a wild card here with Mad Lions, right? Enchanter jungle, so you're not going to have as much frontline. That with the remaining 2 slots that Mad Lions have, they basically have to pick a frontline top laner and potentially a frontline support as well, right? And you see the Nautilus matchup. You could go things like the Leona, or you can opt for some of the solutions they went for here. So since they see Azir on 1 and they had 3 prio picks potentially on R1 through R3, Caps ends up picking the Talia R4 to match and kind of give that facilitator sort of angle, right? It's a very common matchup. From here, this is where things get a little bit spicy, right? Because then you're like, hold up. We see Varus already, and we see Zyra Khan. And as you kind of put this together, this is where all the pieces kind of come into play, right? Because you're like, oh, you pick Zyra Khan so that you can actually go into the Jinx Nautilus matchup. And that the way G2 like to draft right now is that they like to really rely on things like the Smolder and the TF in order to really cheat a lot of matchups on top side, right? A lot of teams will end up playing weak side top laners and they're relatively inflexible because they're like, okay guys, we're gonna pick Cassante here, we're vibing, we're just doing our thing, right? But like Mad Lions does not really want to hold that, right? They want to do something about it. And I really like the Zyra Khan adaptation. There are other aggressive lanes they could have went for potentially, but I think considering what was available, I think Zyra Khan's pretty decent. It's something they could be confident in. And what happens as a result of this is that Elyoya actually has 2 sides to play for now, right? It's because he has the Varus on top side, potentially providing pressure, as well as the Zyra Khan having, of course, one of the strongest sort of early skirmishes in laning phase and just being an overall really well-rounded pick. And, just doesn't discredit like the draft from G2. It's a great draft, right? It has basically everything you need. It has a lot of priority picks. You can play a lot of directions. It's just that Mad Lions Koi had a really good response to it because G2, they end up handshaking the Twisted Fate on R5. So what happens here is that the top lane matchup becomes completely diluted and, there's actually not much that ends up happening as a result of this because it's just 2 individual solo lane AD carries that are effectively just chilling, right? Then one wouldn't have much pressure over the other, and this is the option that they decide to go for. One thing to consider, however, is that on this R5 slot, this could have been something that G2 potentially had a lack of preparation for because Varus top, although it's technically oppressive, it's still an AD carry at the end of the day, right? So you could have gone for some more aggressive matchups, like that are not necessarily not in the meta, right? So things like the Jax is banned, sorry, but like Aurelia even, or Renekton, or things of that nature. I'm struggling to think of some top laners here, so let me pull up a list. But like, there are some top laners that you could probably pick that can cause some chaos in this matchup, right? Even things like the Darius, you could go crazy. This is not something that Broken Blade would always play, but I'm giving some examples of of potential picks that totally could cause problems, right? And I would have liked to see that sort of happen on the top side here, but that's totally okay because the handshake is also fine. No questions asked, right? But Mad Lions Koi very creatively used picks that they're comfortable with in order to create a situation where G2 can have, these prio picks if they want, but they have pressure all over the map. So I think this is a really good example of this, and I just wanted to point that out. So really creative stuff from them, and yeah, I thought it was a really good draft.